All right, so let us start by creating a plane object to be the floor. So I'm going to scale this up a bunch. So this is going to be the floor. So let me quickly start with naming this. Then I'm going to create another plane object to be that I'm going to add a cloth um, tag to. So I'm going to scale this down and use my move tool E, by the way, to move this up. So I'm going to quickly start scaling this up. So if I hit my NB for shaded mode with edge, I'm going to have this line. So I'm going to go to the object tab and start changing it. So let's say this is going to be 30 and 50, just two. And this polygon, um, what can we do with this? So let's say 30, for me to have equal sides, I'm going to say 30, 50. So what I'm going to do is start dividing this for me to have equal size in proportion. So this is, I'm going to have a perfect square. So I'm trying to get the same proportion here. Right? So we have that. So I think we should just still make do with this. Then I'm going to create another object to collide with this. And this is going to be what I'm going to be colliding on before it gets to the floor. All right, so just bring this somewhere here. Okay, so let's get to what we have for today. So I'm going to go to this floor object, right click on it and go over to simulation tags. I'm going to add a cloth collider. So because we want this to collide with the cloth object, we also want to add a cloth collider tag to this platonic object. So I'm going to hit Control or Command and drag this over to the platonic object. So we also have this collider on this platonic object. So the other thing is, since we want to make this our cloth object, so let me quickly duplicate this and Alt or Option G to put this in a group. So I'm going to call this backup because I'm going to need that object back. So hold down Option or Alt to double click here to hide that object. So this becomes the cloth object. So for us to start the simulation, so what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this object, this cloth. You can just right click anywhere in the viewport, go to new tag, simulation, and add cloth, not cloth collider. All right, so I'm trying to be fast, so add cloth. But I hope we will not waste time with this because there's a lot to cover here. So let's start with our tag. If I'm to play, nothing will happen. And the reason why nothing is happening is because the cloth tag doesn't work with the parametric object. So what that means is I need to convert this to a polygonal object. So that is why I first duplicated this so that I can have a backup. So I'm just going to select the cloth, click on this icon to make it editable, or the shortcut is C. You can already see that. So if I click, it makes this editable. You can also see the icon on it looks like more of a triangle that has dots on each of the vertex. So if I hit play now, it falls. So that is to tell you that now that, okay, so this doesn't work with parametric object. It only works with polygonal objects. But then if I go back and play, see what happens. See this effect. The software is trying to simulate this cloth falling on another object. So, but then the simulation is not really accurate. So we need to push the simulation up so that we can get a fairly accurate kind or type of simulation here. So right now we're just doing a general simulation. We have not set whether it's going to be a cloth object or a rubber-like object or paper or stuff like that. So what we're going to do is come over to this cloth tag. The first thing you want to do is coming over the iteration. So the iteration will make this simulation more accurate. So right now it's making use of one iteration. So one iteration is not enough to create a more realistic simulation for that. So if I bump this up to, let's say, 30, I just want you to see this now, what you have here. If I play it back and replay, falls down and you can see it's folding on itself. So this brings a more better calculation. So I can still bump this up. I know if I bring this to 100, it will still work and start seeing more of this. So you see the vibration. So that will be solved later. All right. So let's go over to the other tag. So I will bring this back to 50 just so. So let's look at stiffness. So what does stiffness do? That is just like the previous tutorials we've been looking at in dynamics. So you know what stiffness, flexions, what they do. They kind of they are forces, more of spring forces that hold the structure together. So that's why you see that the structure is joined together. But if I bring this stiffness down to 0 and play, notice what happens. Start to see this crumbling on itself. So what is happening now is that the spring, we have no spring holding the polygons together. So that's why we have this rough effect here. So that is what this stiffness does. Then we also have the flexion. So the flexion, if I'm to play this, you have this, see that effect. So what flexion does is that it even makes your object stiffer than the initial stiffness that you have. So if we bring this flexion down and play this back, so see what happens. You can already see it's more of this is still crumbling on itself. So it's not having that push effect to push every of the polygons apart. So that's what this flexion does. So if I bring this up to 100, which is surprisingly the highest value here, so I can't go beyond 100 for this version R19. So if I play, notice what happens. It pushes them apart and you don't see what we had before then. So that is what this flexion is used for. And you can also see this appears more stiff and you don't really see this. So if I bring this back to 25, so just see the difference. You see what is happening. So you also want to work with this depending on the effect you need. So let's just say 50 for instance. So that is what we have for that. So for the rubber, I'm going to get here for you to see the effect of the rubber. This is where you would see the effect of the rubber more. So if you see, notice the way the object falls. It falls more like a cloth would do, no stretching. But the reason is because the rubber effect is off. So if I'm to bring this rubber to 100 and replay, notice what happens. It starts stretching. Can see, start stretching. So you can use this to simulate a rubbery object and that. So if I bring this back to 0, sorry, see what happens. You don't see any stretching on that object. So that is what this rubber does. Bring that up to 100, it stretches down a little bit and goes away. So if you want it to stretch more, so what you can do is just to come to the stiffness and reduce the stiffness. So I'll bring this back to 25. You notice it stretches more because the spring is not holding. It's trying to hold, but the strength is not much. It's not enough. So the rubber effect takes precedence and stretches more. So I hope that makes sense. All right. So let's look at the next one. We have the bounce. So you see that this object, as it falls to the ground, it bounces a little. You can already see it bounces before it continues whatever it's doing. So I'm going to bring this rubber back to 0. So you can also see the effect of the rubber. It turns everything more like liquid. So have it. So we want to bring this to 20, not too much rubber effect. Then the bounce, you notice the way it bounces. That is what is playing out. And surprisingly, for this bounce, you have to change this in two tags, not only in this cloth tag. You also need to change the bounce effect in the cloth collider. So if I come to this bounce and bring this to 0, you don't really see anything, but by the time we go back to this and bring the bounce also to 0, you notice that that falls and stays, and you see less of the bounce on it. And you can also see that the vibration is reduced, not like before. So that is what the bounce does. Then the friction tells you how the object slides on whatever it collides on. So now the friction is the degree of sliding that you're going to have. Sorry to say, if there is a word for that, permit me. So if I'm to increase this friction, that means the object slides less. If I'm to reduce, it slides more. So if I bring this to 0, notice beginning to slide more. So it's more like you simulating a slippery floor when the floor is slippery. So once it falls down, it just slides. So that is what that does. So if I bring this to 100 for the collider and also for the close, you notice it doesn't slide like it did in the other parts. So that is what the slide is used for. Talking about this mass and size, we're going to look at this later on. And about this tear, if I'm to activate this tear, you would see that this will go crazy. You see, all right. So now what Cinema 4D is looking for with tear is that tear doesn't just work when you activate it like that. You need to add this object to another object for you to see the effect of the tear. So notice as the tear goes on, you have the tear percentage. So, and for this tear to have effect, that means I need to put this cloth object or this polygonal object into a cloth object. So if I hold down Alt or Option, go to Simulate Cloth, put it in as a child of cloth surface, then you start seeing the tear effect that it's supposed to do. Then the degree of the tear, sorry about that, I think let me just take water. All right, I'm here. So the degree of the tear is dependent on what value you have here. So you notice the tear is more intense. So if I'm to bring this to 5 and go back, play this, you notice what happens. It doesn't really tear because this tear is not having more effect. If I bring this to 100 and play back, you see. Okay, so let me bring this over to 200 so it tears more. Okay, this doesn't have it. So bringing this to 150 to start to check again and back and play. So you see the little bit of, so I think what this does more is the higher the value, the less tear you get, and as you start bringing this down, it tears more until the structure collapses on itself. So that is what that. So if I bring this to 120, it tears more. You see, if I bring it to 110, so far it is more than 100. So this gives you more of a solid plastic object which falls, more like a breakable, right? If you understand. So you don't see, you see that it loses the spring effect, so you can have that breakable having effect here. Okay, so if you bring this up, you have more of the spring effect, so 130, and it holds itself more before the tear goes away. All right, so that's what this tear is used for. So I'm going to get rid of the tear, so we don't have tear. Then I'm going to get rid of this. Sorry, I have to get rid of it. So let's look at the next one, and that is going over to the force tab. So this force is where you will determine. All right, so talking about this, if you go over to the force tab, you have the first thing we have is the gravity. So the gravity is what's making this fall down. So if I'm to bring this gravity to 0, what happens is it floats and start moving up. Floats, nothing is happening. All right. So the reason you don't have anything happening is because no force is bringing this down. If I take this to a positive value, start floating up. All right. So you can already see the effect. So if I bring this to 0.2 and it floats up. So what I can do is, let's bring this back to maybe -4, so to say. It falls. Surprisingly, it falls because we have a minus sign. Minus sign means drag it down. Positive pushes the object up. So what the drag does is it reduces the effect of this gravity. So if I'm to right click here, so we have the normal gravity, so it falls normally. So if I want to have this gravity value but still reduce the effect of the gravity, then I can use this drag to do that. So if I bring the drag to 120, notice the rate at which it falls. It reduces the effect of that drag, of the fall rather. So if I bring it to 10, so the higher the value, the less the more drag I'm going to have. So if I bring this to 2, it falls. Don't really see difference, but there is a little bit of drag to that. So if I have 5, see the rate at which it falls compared to when you have 0. See, it falls down. Then we now have the wind. So I'm going to bring this to 5. We now have the wind direction. So the wind direction is telling us that we'll add wind to this object, and what direction do we want this object to fall. So if I select this platonic, you can already see this is the z direction, x and y is pointing up. So if I want the wind to blow this object towards its z direction, all I need to do is just go to the z direction. We already have a value, but we are not seeing the effects of this because the wind strength is set to 0. All right. So if we bring the wind strength to 1 to start with, and it's having effect, but the strength is too low. So let's bring this to 10. So you can already see that this is falling towards direction. So let me increase this time to 200 so you can see this more. So you can see that the wind is blowing towards direction. So the higher the value, if I want to increase the strength of the wind, is either I increase this here or increase the strength generally. So, but I can increase the strength on the Z to 2 centimeters. So you can see the effect is more. So let's bring this to 10. So you can already see what's happening. Or I could just bring this to 20. So see the effect of that on this object. Okay. So that's what this is doing. If I want it to, as it going there, then it also comes towards this x direction, then I can mix it with this value. So maybe this is going to be 5. So it comes towards this direction. You can already see. So you have that. Then let's look at the next one. You have your wind turbulence strength. So the turbulence is noise, the degree of noise you're going to add to this. So if I increase this turbulence, so the higher the value, the more turbulence it's going to have. If I make this 2, you can see more recoil on this object, and the reason is because you have noise in the wind, so you can use this to create more of a flag like stuff. Then what else? You also have your wind speed. So the speed of the turbulence, this turbulence that we've set, what speed do you want to have? So if you want this turbulence to be fast, then you can just increase this. So you notice the rate at which it's going. So the turbulence is small. But if you want the turbulence to be too slow, very slow, I can just change this to 0.5 and see that the turbulence effect is not that much. So that is what this, right click. Then you have your wind drag. So from what this is telling you, it's going to drag the effect of the strength of your wind. So then the wind lift is what's making this object to hold it in the air. So if I bring this to 0, and see what happens. It just falls, more like there is no gravity. Sorry, more like gravity is still affecting it. So it's the lift that is making it interact with the air, right? So making this to 100, you can notice more of the interaction with the air before it falls. So that is what this wind impact rod, sorry, wind impact, having impact of the wind on the object. Then the lift is what will make it interact more, sorry. So if I bring this to 100, it lifts this object up, and see the effects you're going to have. Just hold on for me, I'll be back. All right, so that's what the lift does. Then I'm going to bring it back to 10. So the next thing is air resistance. So this is the resistance of this object with the air. So you can also look at this. If you bring this to 10, you see the effect with that. So you can just try and work with these values and for you to see whatever you can come up with. Then the self-repulsion slows down the simulation, and I've tried to see the effects, but I don't really see how it repulses itself. So from my understanding of this self-repulsion, that this, you notice as this thing falls down, let me pause this. See this object crumbling on itself, you can see this coming up. That's what the self-repulsion is supposed to do, and for you to now set distance, but I don't really see. So let's just try this. So if we activate the self-repulsion, mind you, it's going to take long to render. Then we need to specify the distance of polygon from one another. All right, so the distance we have is 10 centimeter. If you bring up this cube and change this to 10 centimeter all through, so you can just have a feel of how 10 centimeter is. So you can already see that 10 centimeter is more than so many polygons here. So let's bring this to 1. So that's how I actually work to be sure of what distance. So I think 1 should be fine, even though 0.5 centimeter. I think 0.5 centimeter is okay. So that means the polygons will be this distance far from, you understand? So it's going to repulse itself this distance so they don't crumble on one another. So I think we can do away with 1.1.1. All right, so 0.1 is not bad, but let's just say 0.15. So what we'll do is come over to this guy and change the distance to 0.15 centimeter. Then the force, you can also set the force, how the effect of the force, the strength of the force on the object. So we start seeing this not wanting to intersect here, and you can see the simulation is a lot slower. So let's see if it doesn't crumble on itself. You can see what I was saying. I don't see the effect, still crumbles on itself. But then if we increase this, let's increase this to 1 and see what we'll have. So I'm going to pause and rewind and play back. Let's see what we'll have. 1, we don't really see here until it falls down, so that for us to see the interaction. So just wait a while and let's see what we'll have here. So this is the issue I always run into. You can see even at that, it still crumbles on itself. So I don't know why. Maybe the force is not enough. So let's bring this force up to 200 and replay, and let's see what we'll have. Like I said, this is going to be taking long to run to calculate now, because it's having to calculate a lot which it wasn't calculating before. So you can see what is happening now. So the force is now fine. Wow, I've learned something new. So the force is now like I say, we always learn. So the force is now acting well on this. I've not really cranked up this force up to this I always make it 10, 20. I was always afraid to see high value. So I think that's one thing with 3D. Don't be afraid of values. Change and see what you get. So now this is actually playing well. So the first is not letting this crumble on itself. But then we need to dampen this off because it's kind of going crazy. So we just dampen. So what damp does just more of drag, it reduces the effect of the force. So we can bring this to 10 and recalculate so that by the time the effect is playing out, it doesn't go crazy. You can still see the simulation and it goes slowly. All right, so let's see. Okay, so you can see what's happening. So they're trying to crumble on one another, then the force will pull them again. That, oh no, you can't. You should maintain this distance. So that is what this is doing. So I'm going to get rid of that. All right, and we're back. So then we have our dresser tab. Now this dresser tab, I'm going to stop my tutorial here. So this is going to be a part 2 because it's already taking long. Then I will just start with the dresser and go to cache and export. So if this was helpful, please do give me a thumbs up and like the video, share it because it helps me. And if you are new to this channel, you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe because I make tutorials like this every week. So do have a wonderful day and God bless you. Bye.